Good morning to all our colleagues in Southeast Asia. Good afternoon to friends in Hawaii, and good evening to colleagues and friends on the mainland. It's my pleasure as director for the UH Center for Southeast Asian Studies to welcome you today. My name is Miriam Stark, and today I'm happy to introduce Facing Nature, Disaster Preparedness, Responses and Innovations in Southeast Asia. This webinar series for spring 2026 examines transformations through four critical lenses: disasters and resilience, borders and belonging, artistic resistance, and smart urban futures. Each theme highlights how Southeast Asian communities navigate uncertainty, create new forms of solidarity, and imagine alternative futures beyond inherited state-driven models. Together, the series offers an interdisciplinary look at how Southeast Asia is reshaping itself amid global and regional change. And to do that, we have an excellent moderator today, Dr. Brian Szuster, who is a professor in the Department of Geography and Environment at the University of Hawaii at Manoa. Dr. Schuster's research and teaching focuses on sustainable coastal planning and management in Southeast Asia and Hawaii. He investigates how development in coastal areas often occurs without adequate planning, and his research contributes to understanding the social and environmental impacts of these developments and creating more sustainable coastal communities. He has led numerous international projects, collaborating with organizations such as the Canadian International Development Agency, International Water Management Institute, International Rice Research Institute, Center on Integrated Rural Development on Asia Pacific, and Partnerships in Environmental Management for the Seas of East Asia. Brian also teaches courses in environmental hazards and natural resource management in Southeast Asia at the University of Hawaii, Burapha University in Thailand, and in Japan, where he serves on the executive committee of the UH Center for Southeast Asian Studies. Take it away, Brian.
Okay. Thank you, Miriam, and welcome to everyone on the internet today. This is our first Loose SEA webinar of 2026, and as the first one, we're going to be exploring how Southeast Asia is responding to intensifying climate disasters through indigenous knowledge, scientific innovation, and community resilience. It compares strategies across the region, highlighting challenges and breakthroughs, and that are shaping Southeast Asia's climate future. So very relevant and topical presentation today. We have three excellent presenters who've agreed to share their knowledge and experience in these areas. After the presentations, we'll have a short panel discussion, and then we'll entertain questions from the audience. So I encourage you, if you have questions, to enter those into the Q&A questions section on the Zoom website. So with that, let's get on to the presentations. And our first presenter is Dr. Charles Ham from the Politeknik Bentara Citra Bangsa in Indonesia. Dr. Ham is a senior disaster management and humanitarian assistance specialist for the National Disaster Preparedness Training Center and Mercy Corp in Indonesia. He also has experience with USAID Invest's DM project in disaster management, human capital, and institutional development. He established the Global Disaster Response Division at Hope Worldwide, overseeing international disaster preparedness, response, and recovery programs. And he's guided disaster risk management, liaised with UN coordination systems, and provided technical assistance to country affiliates and partner donor organizations, and provided training for country members. His presentation today is titled Indigenous Ecological Knowledge and Community-Led Resilience Strategies in Rural, Coastal, and Urban Environments. And in this presentation, Dr. Ham will discuss how disasters impact Indonesia and the growing complexity of these events, and how indigenous knowledge from the small historic spice islands of North Maluku contributes to sustainable development lessons. So please join me in welcoming Dr. Charles Ham.
Good morning and selamat pagi from Jakarta. Thank you, Dr. Schuster and Dr. Stark, for inviting me. It's a pleasure to be here and talking about the indigenous knowledge in disasters management in Indonesia. Allow me to share my screen, and I will try to share. Southeast Asia has 10 countries and so many cultures, and I think it will take forever to talk about the different indigenous knowledge, but I will focus on especially North Maluku, what I researched in recent years, and talk about how we can learn from the indigenous knowledge for disaster risk management. So as mentioned, I now work for Politeknik Bentara Citra Bangsa, and in Jakarta, I come from a non-governmental organization where I worked quite a long time with Hope Worldwide, and then I was working for University of Hawaii under a National Disaster Preparedness Training Center. We were working on a USAID project helping the Indonesian disaster management. So as mentioned, I come from the non-state perspective, spending a lot of time on civil society, but also contributed in helping state or governmental capacity improvement. So I'll start by reminding, I'm sure many of you already know this, that in November 2025, there was a huge flooding that took place in Sumatra. This is just one picture. There are more graphic picture that explain how a massive flooding takes place in the forest of Sumatra and affected many people. And what happened was there was a cyclone that developed in the Andaman Seas, and not many people noticed the cyclone started in Andaman Sea and the Malacca Strait that went through South China Sea. So this is, to my understanding, the first in the history that a typhoon or cyclone travel between two ocean, and we can see a pattern coming along. And in Sumatra, not many people notice. Talking about typhoon or cyclone, as of this morning, we noticed there's a movement in the Pacifics where Typhoon Penha is moving towards the southern part of the Philippines. In the map below left, you can see that most experts in the past consider the equator free from typhoons. And we have other experts here, but now more and more storms are coming into the equator, as we see the map of Philippines, where Manila is often hit, and Legazpi City is considered the typhoon capital in the Philippines because every year they have so many warnings and typhoons. I was actually caught in a typhoon in Legazpi City with my family many years ago. But and Tacloban that suffer from typhoon at Typhoon Haiyan. And now the Penha typhoon is actually moving south to the Mindanao with some more effect into the south to the Indonesian part. So this is the anomaly that we are seeing globally. And just adding to that, 2 weeks ago, Indonesia has been going through a monsoon season, I suppose. And interestingly, we were surrounded by 7 different systems that were moving from the Indian Ocean all the way to Pacific Ocean. And it looks like the atmospheric system are channeling like a big conveyor belt from Java to all the way to Timor-Leste or Timor Island. That's why we had some flooding that's been taking place in Indonesia in the past 2 weeks or so. So this is what's happening in Southeast Asia. But when we look at the global risk, the World Risk Report in 2025 listed 3 of the Southeast Asian country in the top 6 country with a higher risk, and adding some more other country in the list. But we are also having a challenge where the global aid pressure is mounting, where less funding is available in the international humanitarian assistance, with more and more people are in need. So I take you back to 2009 when there was an earthquake in West Sumatra, and a hotel like this Ambachang Hotel collapsed, and so many people died in this structure, along with other houses across the region. But one simple structure, one hotel, killed so many lives. And then in 2018, there was a tsunami, earthquake, landslide, liquefaction, opened the eyes of the world how villages were swept away as the land moves and create a lot of devastation. In Sentani, 2019, in just outside of Jayapura in Papua, where there was a new real estate development that was open. Sadly, it was by the riverbank, and soon enough, a few weeks later, a big, massive flash flood comes and destroy all the houses. And you can see the couple standing there, looking at all their savings and their future. So and it was sad when I was there on the ground. So this is what's happening as urbanization and poor disaster management are happening globally. So my own history, I started getting involved with disaster management when the 2004 tsunami took place. This is a poster that I presented at the UNESCO conference in November in Banda Aceh. Basically, the world was talking about 20th anniversary of Aceh tsunami, but they forgot one thing. There was a small island called Nias Island that was also devastated. So my poster was one within hundreds of poster that the only one that talk about Nias Island. This is how I went there and tried to help out, not just on the short term response, but how do we help the island recover better for the long term? And it opens up the eyes that how small islands, underprivileged, underdeveloped, are more vulnerable facing disasters. So from then on, I went on to develop school pedagogy, where we train hundreds of thousands of teachers, and we've presented. There's some links to it if anybody would like to know. But basically, 40% of the population is probably in schools, between primary school to high school, all the way to high school. So that was the challenge, to create simple messaging and training school teachers so they can empower school children in preparing for disasters. As mentioned by Dr. Szuster, I worked for InvestDM project. We did a lot of knowledge exchange, especially between Indonesia and the U.S., learning how the U.S. operate and what lesson we can take to Indonesia. Indonesia tried to do the map in the bottom right. You see the Indonesia's plan to develop 9 regional offices so that they can reach the small island and in marginalized area. However, they're still stuck with funding, so this is not moving forward. This is a challenge that archipelago island country like Indonesia, with 17,000 islands and 25,000 islands in total, are in Southeast Asia. So after the 2004 Aceh tsunami, Indonesia has improved its disaster management system. The government system has grown. And in fact, in 2023, Indonesia sent the largest delegation to assist the government of Turkey and the people of Turkey. And I was there supporting the team as they were into the subtropic country. And we wrote a paper with Professor Carl Kim on Journal of Emergency Management. Basically, we need to learn from the past and plan for the future, and not just using technical knowledge that we developed in disaster management world, but also the cultural knowledge in making policy making, and also the importance of education and training, regional collaborations. Turkey was helping Indonesia in Aceh in 2004, and then now Indonesia was helping Turkey in 2023. And emphasizing also the lesson from that is the issue of equity and marginalized community. There was a large millions of refugees from Syria that emigrated to Turkey that was affected by the earthquake. That creates another issue that we need to be opening our eyes as we talk about disaster management. How do we deal with inequity and marginalized community that already suffer before disasters, and when disaster comes, it's even creating a larger issue. Here's some pictures in how we operate and the structure that kills so many millions of people, and how the building codes were not properly implemented. But that was the Turkey case. And in 2018, talking about resilience, resilience is important. I did a study on measuring resilience perception after the earthquake. So 4 years after earthquakes, we measure the resilience perceptions on the community and the villagers. And basically, the key lesson that comes out is the access to basic services, because marginalized community cannot access basic services in the emergency, and it's almost impossible to wait for outside help to come everybody. And understanding disaster risk is important, and housing recovery capacity is also important, because people need a place to live, they need to recover quickly, and these are the issues we need to think about, helping communities in small island, marginalized community, vulnerable communities. We did a 25 question instrument, and we're now using the instrument to measure in North Sumatra after the November 2025 flood. We have some recommendation here for the village, but I will not read it individually. But what I was brought is to talk about the indigenous knowledge. And I will focus on what my research and my dissertation has focused, which is the North Maluku region. And that's where I'm from. This is my hometown, the island of Ternate. If you measure, it's basically 10 kilometers from the top north to top south, down south, and then 10 kilometers from the west to the east. But also there's a large volcano, Mount Gamalama, in the middle, and 210,000 people live on the island. And this is pretty amazing to see how this is the center of the spice trade from thousands of years ago, where people come and work here. So I did a paper that was published just a few days ago, and basically we look at the environmental analysis, and within the island, the question is, what would you do if a large volcano eruption takes place, which normally people are called to go to the coastline and move to other islands. But what if at the same time you can have a double whammy, where a tsunami, which can be as high as 12-meter high, hit the island? Where do you go? So that's a big question, and I come up with a big question of how can we develop sustainable urban drainage, which the island also have water shortages and flooding issue, while we create a tsunami evacuation on the coastline, so people can go up beyond what the tsunami waves can come in. So this is what the paper talk on the urban side, because this is an island, remote, underprivileged, with an urban setting where you can sit in the city and have a nice cappuccino or pizza or pasta while you can enjoy traditional things. Now, talking about indigenous knowledge, I did a research that I will focus on today, which was published in the Journal of Human Ecology and Sustainability about the island. Basically, I'm taking the small village where a lake was formed, the Tolire Lake, many 250 years ago by an eruption. The island was called the Spice Island. This is the oldest drawing of the island with a giant clove tree in the middle, and it just fascinates the people in Europe. So basically, on the top left, you can see the crowded island of Ternate, and on the bottom left, you can see a 300 to 400 meter lake that was lush. It's a migratory bird area. The forest is well protected. People don't touch the lake, and it's just amazing how they protect the environment using indigenous knowledge and learning from the lesson how the earthquake that takes place. But this comes from the sustainable development theory that we talk about, that Campbell wrote, published about the balance of 3 E's: economy, environment, and equity. And I think what we all agree is the unsustainable development that's taking place is destroying ecology all over the world. And there needs to be a balance, not just between economy and environment, but also the community, the social equity that creates, and this become an issue in many places. So in 1975, the Mount Gamalama erupted. 141 people died, and there's a local wisdom developed from that. That this study, an ethnographic study, basically trying to withdraw the lessons from the sustainable development perspective to see what indigenous knowledge actually develop and exist from that eruption that took place 251 years ago. So the lake is unique because the paper was structured under environmental, economic, and social equity lessons, and the lake is believed to be there's a myth that comes with it called the Telirigam Jaha, the local language. Basically, the story about the lake, how it was created, and the myth remains until today. The value that there was an incest that took place. A father and a daughter had a intercourse, unwanted, and the nature erupted, and there was a big explosion that swallowed the whole village into a lake. And there's the belief is that there's still living people, spiritual being under the water. There's a spiritual village under the water guarded by the giant crocodile garden. And people respect that. They still think that their ancestors still walk with them. And we respect that. We should take the lessons from the indigenous community that exists until today. And they have a person that's called Fanira Soa Takome. Soa means village, Takome village. The Fanira is basically the connector between the people and the spiritual world, and the Fanira gives the direction and lessons. Occasionally, there will be violation. Kids will be playing by the lake and get bitten by or get killed by crocodiles. There are 7 crocodiles actually in the lake. The study has been done using drones to take video of the crocodiles. But this is interesting, the village, because it's all lush and green. You can see the picture on the bottom left. There was a huge boulder from a volcanic eruption, but there's also a hill of Java plum tree, or locally they call it jamblang. And this is the only side of Java plum tree on the island, where hundreds of the trees and what do you call endangered animal live there. The blue-eyed cuscus, the Maleo birds or Megapodus fracinet still there, and there's protection taking place because it's also a sanctuary for migrating bird from the north to the south all the way to Australia. We can see here that there's also a belief, because the island has many riverines where water flow from the top to the sea, just like in Hawaii. We can talk about the connection later on between Hawaii and the people in North Maluku, but they have what they call the jere. Jere is the sacred stones or places on the island where people honor. And I was able to visit with the local leaders to Barangka Takome. Barangka is the river, in the dried river where water flow. And there needs to be special prayer. They come for prayers. They come for sacred water with they believe to be a healing process. And there's a restriction because you cannot enter the area of the jere without permission, without prayer, or you will get sucked into this spiritual world and never be able to come back, kind of like Alice in the Wonderland. But this is interesting because in disaster preparedness, you look at the environmental, you look at all the legal requirement, the regulations. Most of them are violated. But the only way that I've seen in at least in Indonesia is environmental protection comes with a local myth and local belief. People don't touch that because there's a spiritual belief that people are more reverent to than the other legal regulations. And also the island has the Kololikie ritual where the Sultan, as the connector to the volcano spirit, will have the leaders to go around in a boat to offer prayer for the volcano to calm down. And also there's a Ferekie where they ascend to the volcano by foot and offer prayers and all the spiritual. Interestingly, this has been well documented by the clerk in his writing from 1890. However, Alfred Russel Wallace, in his book in 1890 about Malay archipelago, he was a little silent about Tolira Lake. I don't know whether he traveled that or he wanted to keep it secret, as also the Komodo dragon. Wallace didn't talk about the Komodo dragon. So this is interesting when you look at the environmental lesson. On the social equity side, we can see there's a moral compass and family value. The region talks about Falaraha, the 4 families that developed or built the community and the clans. And so there's a strong family unity because they understand the differences. Now, don't make a mistake, because this is a small island, but it is also a cosmopolitan where many different culture has traveled and mingled for thousands of years. So this is a cosmopolitan of culture. And you see the gentleman on the top left taking us to Jere Salawaku and explaining about the Jere, the sacred area. And during the ethnographic study, we pick up what they call the Bakusidagu. Basically, it's a participatory planning. And what they say is, Marimo ngone futuru, masidika ngone fururu. We together we are strong, alone we are wilted. So there's a strong belief in working together, participatory approach in planning. And the local elders kept the knowledge. There's a leader between the earthly world, the Bobato Dunia, and also the Bobato Ahira, the spiritual world. So they have 2 different priest or elder that connects the both world. The Jere also represent the spiritual sanctuary, but also a courage where the battle for Fort Williamston took place, and how they kick out the Dutch people from the island. So but there's also small business opportunity. If you go around the island, there's probably thousands of local businesses and small businesses that takes place. But there's also a McDonald's on the island, which is strange. And there's lessons on economic development. We see the development of nature conservancy, geosite tourism, land use plan. We can take land use plan lessons from the island, including inclusive planning and the hazard issues. The island also has issues in disaster risk reduction. There's a low local disaster risk agency management capacity needs to develop. The technology and early warning system needs to develop. The evacuation route between the island also took place. But at the end of the day, there needs to be a indigenous knowledge, the resilience that needs to be preserved and needs to be balanced for the development of sustainable community. And the lessons is definitely adaptable for global sustainability planning, and the need for combining the indigenous knowledge and scientific knowledge for disaster risk management. So I also want to touch a little book that I wrote 2 years ago about restorative justice, because North Maluku is a center for nickel production in the east, but there's been indigenous community affected, and our planning has been focused on the surface. There's only 3% of biodiversities are on land. However, we have 97% of the earth of biodiversity on earth is in the ocean, where we have, the biodiversities and lives and food security. So there's a lot of damage taking place from the nickel production and pollution into the ocean. By the way, ocean's still the largest dumping place for our trash. And just taking the Google map, we see an obvious damage on the Earth's surface, mining and pollution and all flow into the sea, affecting small communities. I will not talk this in detail, but there's a lot of issues that will affect if more planning on the ocean perspective, not just on land. I want to bring up this issue of indigenous planning compared to modern planning. Modern planning has only risen in recent years, but indigenous planning has taken place for thousands of years. And on the island of on Halmahera, there's a local tribe called Ohongana Manoa. They've been more pushed inland, or they call the Gutil tribe. And a lot of lessons we can take from this community. People can call them uncivilized, people can call them backward, whatever. But there are many lessons we can take in protecting the community from disaster management, disaster issues. They have their own land use. They have Magaliho, where the sacred forest where the ancestor lives. They have the Raki Amoko, the food forest where you can plant food plants into that land. They have Otao Moi, which is basically community-based local villages arrangement. There's a lot of indigenous knowledge about sea use plan, not just land use plan. Like the terrace of the house. Farmers are not supposed to catch fishes near the shore. They have to go a little deeper because they understand the ecosystem, the food chain that takes place, and how the coral system. Dr. Szuster can talk more about it, and how it cleans the system and the habitat. And the fishing codes, people cannot catch certain fish. Certain fish you can catch in the sea, but when fishes go up on the river, you're not supposed to catch them, because that's the time when they lay eggs, and then fish will fly would swim back to the ocean. The hunting codes, they do hunting, but then when they go hunt, they see a deer with baby deers, they cannot hunt them, because that's just their indigenous knowledge in protecting, not to talk about planting trees. This is Grandpa Ngetek. He just passed away several days ago, and he's been protective of the community and the environment. There was a story in my dissertation that comes how Grandpa Ngetek comes and comes to the Bupati or the local mayor's office, asking them to put back the trees. Giant trees were cut down for development. He asked them to put back the tree because the bird lost their homes. They don't have their homes. So, and he's been very protective of the environment. He's no longer there. Hopefully they will continue to protect. So these are a small, you see a little hut on the bottom right, bottom left, how they live, nomads between the nomadly between the villages. But we think this is bad and this is backward, not effective, but they're actually protecting. They work on the land for several years and they let the land rest. They move to another places. They work on the land and they move on. They let the land rest and recover. The bottom, the middle bottom is the local chakalele dance. I have to bring that up for Miriam. It's just a simple chakalele dance with no costume, just how community value the culture locally. So there's also Rorano. I learned in my research that there's a traditional herbal medicine practice that takes place, and how they take medicine. Some of the medicines from local herbs are actually been extracted using for modern medicine as well. So there's a lot of lessons we can take from indigenous knowledge in all aspects of life, including especially in disaster management, how they protect the ecology, environment, but also the social equity. And this is the important part. And I'm going to share a little bit of my dissertation that should be coming out on ProQuest. I did a study on 25 years of the province of North Maluku. And what happened is North Maluku was a colonial, was a spice
Excuse me,
trade.
Charles. I think we're running
Time's
on
out.
our timelines a little bit. So if you
Yes,
could
sir.
wrap up, I'd appreciate that.
This is the last slide, and the lesson comes out is good governance reform, transformative planning, participative process. These are the issues that should be concerned. The three issues as we try to develop disaster resilience and preparedness using traditional indigenous community knowledge. So that would be it for me. Thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you very much, Charles. Very interesting presentation. I think we'll pick up some of the topics from the end of your presentations in the panel discussions. Thank you very much.
Bless.
Our second presenter is Mary-Gardner Coppola, who is the Chief of Staff at the Pacific Disaster Center in Hawaii, and she brings decades of experience to the PDC working in diplomacy, defense, and overseas assignments in Thailand, Ecuador, China, Taiwan, and Singapore. She was also a member of the U.S. Marine Corps Commandant's Organizational Transformation Leadership Team. Her presentation today is titled Innovations in Early Warning Systems, Modeling and Data in Southeast Asia. So I think this is going to be a very interesting presentation, and please join me in welcoming Mary-Gardner Coppola.
Great. Thank you so much, Brian. Appreciate that introduction. Let me start sharing my screen. Can you confirm that you're seeing it?
Yes, it's good.
Okay, great. So I really am so happy that I am coming after Charles because he touched on a lot of the issues that I'm going to be talking about actually in my presentation. And that's just to kind of even begin with the fact that acknowledging what he started his presentation with, which is that some of the very same factors that give Southeast Asia its extraordinary natural beauty are also the source of extraordinary natural risk. And so, as kind of one of the world's most disaster exposed regions, we're seeing that these disasters are becoming more frequent and more severe. And even with all that has been done to build countries' disaster management capacities. So today, what I want to talk about is kind of what we describe in the disaster risk reduction community about this kind of last mile challenge. And while there are several factors that can make the last mile so hard to cross, I'm going to emphasize three gaps here. The first would be the gap between scientific information and policy decisions. The second would be the gap between national early warning systems and then local responders. And then the third can be the gap between institutions and the communities they serve, particularly, some of these indigenous and smaller island communities that Charles was just talking about. And at the same time, this is our reality, is that the information often exists, whether it's sophisticated hazard forecasts or impact models or vulnerability assessments, but it doesn't always reach the right people, or it doesn't arrive at the right time, or oftentimes it's in a form that they can't act on. And so my organization, PDC, was founded in Hawaii to focus on finding better ways to bridge this last mile. We recently were working with the ASEAN Secretariat actually, and what we found in the early warning assessment we did with them was that these challenges presented by this last mile are continuing to serve as roadblocks, even as the region's made a lot of progress. We've seen kind of in the technical side of things. So whether that's satellite systems or modeling capabilities or monitoring networks, but it's converting all of that technical information into actionable warnings at the kind of the community and operational level where we're getting stuck again and again. And so what we're seeing is that early warning isn't just about technology. And so it gets at these themes of trust, of clarity, coordination, and local capacity. And we're finding that, when any of these are missing, the warning fails, no matter how sophisticated the science is that's behind it. So PDC has been working on this issue in Southeast Asia for more than 2 decades. And actually now we're engaging governments and regional organizations and humanitarian partners around the world. And again, to be looking at these last mile challenges. And our focus, as you can see kind of in some of the information that I've brought up, is really how do we, kind of take that complex science information and put it into something that people can actually use. And we're getting at it through a number of different ways. Again, we're an applied research firm, tech focused, and so we're looking at it from you'll see in the top left, kind of multi-hazard risk analysis, to decision support platforms, to including starting at the mobile phone, mobile app level, all the way up to sophisticated emergency operations centers, coming up with kind of early warning systems, and then capacity building. But let me take 2 case studies today to demonstrate how this plays out in practice. And I thought I'd do one of some engagements we do at kind of the regional level in Southeast Asia, and then one at the national level. So our first case involves the ASEAN Coordinating Center for Humanitarian Assistance on Disaster Management, which I'm sure many of you are familiar with the AHA Center. What you may not be as familiar with is its integrated situational awareness platform, which you can kind of see it up on the screens here, known as the Disaster Monitoring and Response System, or DMRS. Now, DMRS is a customized version of PDC's disaster-aware technology, and we've supported the AHA Center's use of DMRS for over a decade. So that now today, DMRS serves as kind of the technical backbone for regional hazard monitoring, shared situational awareness, impact forecasting, and coordinated regional response across all of the now 11 ASEAN member states. I'm sure many of you remember the earthquake that took place in Myanmar last year, and that offers us a compelling example of how DMRS functions under pressure. As we all know, the effects from that 7.7 magnitude earthquake were felt not only across Myanmar, but into Thailand, India, and even southwestern China. And the toll was devastating. So here is where DMRS comes in. Within moments of the earthquake's detection by the USGS, the US Geological Survey, DMRS automatically created a hazard event. That's what this is here. The chart, I don't know if you can see, and pushed this alert to disaster monitoring teams across the region. This includes via mobile devices. And this alert was more than just an event happened, but it's this brief here on the far right corner that we call a comprehensive event brief that was automatically generated at the same time, and it contained real-time impact estimates. So if you can, depending on the size of your screen, read some of this small text, you'll see that it had, vulnerable populations affected. It had kind of critical infrastructure that might be impacted, what we call lifelines, so power, communication, and then also kind of some of the needs, some of the humanitarian needs that are likely, going to be needed because of the impacts assessed. And so what you see there, it's not just descriptive information, but it's decision support information, right? So it works to kind of format, but also prioritize the information to help responders understand where to focus resources, but also what kinds of assistance is going to be needed most urgently and where. So staying on this example, to go kind of one step further with what DMRS is able to do is because it serves as an information sharing platform, it's also able to integrate advanced analysis from different sources. So for instance, one initiative that PDC has is a tool called JADE, the Joint Analysis of Disaster Exposure. That's this report in the top left. And this is something that we've developed in partnership with the World Food Program and the UN Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs. And it takes the 3 individual assessments from our respective organizations and combines them. We vet it. It goes through a kind of validation process among all 3 organizations and then can be fed into the DMRS system so that they have all the information that World Food Program is pulling together, same with UN OCHA, and then also PDC's data. So they have that very, very comprehensive picture in one place, as opposed to having to pull from many different sources for, leadership briefings or any kind of communications that they're trying to generate. On top of that, DMRS also has this in the bottom left, this kind of interactive mapping interface. And that's pulling in data layers from Copernicus, Microsoft AI for Good, Unisat, MapAction, and in this instance, the Myanmar Information Management Unit. And so, again, this is another capability that the analysts inside the AHA Center had to develop detailed information products for field teams because it was consolidating all of this information in one place. And then the last thing is that as individual reports are coming in, so if you're not going to use the consolidated JADE analysis, if you want to see individually what's coming in from some of these places, just as an example in the bottom right, all the sit reps, all the situation reports being generated by different organizations will also automatically pull in. And so all of this reporting is viewed in one single place for the AHA Center. Why did this work? Well, because the systems, the procedures, the trusted partnerships, all of this was already in place. Relationships that PDC had begun building more than a decade ago with both the AHA Center, but then also each of the member states' national disaster management agencies had been built and tested over years. They were not being improvised in this one specific emergency. So I thought it would also be useful to kind of talk about how this works at the national level, because as I said in the previous example, PDC is also connected and plugged into kind of at the NDMO level, the National Disaster Management Organizations in each of the countries in Southeast Asia. In Philippines, they have a system called PhiloAir. This is their national multi-hazard risk and early warning platform. And it's based on PDC technology, and we actually helped them develop it. But it's now institutionalized within their Office of Civil Defense. That distinction matters, and I'll come back to that in a bit. So just looking at last year, the Philippines faced one severe hazard event after another. Tropical storms and flooding, earthquakes in Cebu and Davao, and powerful typhoons and more. And what we saw was that throughout all of this, the Office of Civil Defense leveraged PhiloAir to maintain integrated situational awareness. because the platform was bringing together field reports and weather forecasts and population exposure modeling, infrastructure impact assessments, and again, all in one interface. You can see that kind of in the top right corner. It's all in one place for them. So, for example, during Tropical Storm Wipa, the responders used Philaware to map flood reports in real time. And so then they were able to almost immediately brief senior leadership with a much clearer picture of what was happening on the ground. After the earthquakes, after both of them, they were only, I think, about 2 weeks apart. So the teams used Philaware's automated hazard briefs, that's again in this top right corner, to quickly identify at-risk populations and infrastructure and to coordinate response operations. But I think it's important to emphasize that Philaware is not just a useful tool, a shiny object that has cool tech as behind it. At this point, Philaware is formally embedded in the standard operating procedures of the Office of Civil Defense, and their leaders have called it kind of the cornerstone of that country's disaster preparedness and response ecosystem. Perhaps even more importantly, the Office of Civil Defense continues to fund the platform's maintenance and operations, and its use has been expanded to regional offices with trained local staff. So that is national ownership. It's not dependency on an outside support feature. I think something I just want to add, reflecting on what Charles was talking about, I want to be clear about what DMRS and Philaware do and what they do not do. They do not replace decision makers' judgment or local knowledge. What they're doing is enhancing the speed and the clarity and coordination with which those decision makers can act. And they demonstrate how systems and capacity that are developed in steady state operations, when there's time to train, to test and refine, can directly support life-saving response when the disasters eventually do strike. So both of these case studies, I think, point to a broader trend worth noting. And that's that in many Southeast Asian nations, what we're seeing is they're moving beyond kind of fragmented legacy systems, and they're adopting more modern and equally important integrated decision support platforms. And so in this sense, I would say they're leapfrogging the development path that wealthier nations have followed. Because instead of building separate systems for separate hazards or different levels of government, and then having to go back and expend a lot of resources to retroactively connect them all, they're building and implementing cloud-based interoperable platforms from the start. And so we see kind of the goal here is to help countries move from kind of this reactive response posture towards an anticipatory, risk-informed governance. And we can do this by prioritizing support for national and regional early warning initiatives, strengthening of institutional and technical capacity, and then also, which is something PDC works very hard to promote, is the data sharing and coordination mechanisms across Southeast Asia and beyond, because as I said, we're global. And so I guess being respectful of everyone's time, I'm going to close kind of with this. So we all know that hazards are inevitable. Disaster losses are not. And so when science, technology, governance, and the communities can be truly connected, not just in theory, but in practice, warnings can become action, preparedness becomes protection, and resilience becomes sustainable. And so with that in mind, PDC is just honored to work alongside Southeast Asian disaster management leaders and regional partners in this shared missions. We've seen what is possible when these systems are built with foresight, when partnerships are cultivated before the emergencies, and then, of course, when technology serves the human decision making rather than replacing it. So I'll pause there and I look forward to the discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary-Gardner, for that talk. Very interesting, and yes, we will pick up the discussion later up with the panel. On to our third presenter, who is Dr. Indrajit Pal from the Asian Institute of Technology in Bangkok, Thailand. Dr. Pal is the chair of the Disaster Preparedness and Mitigation and Management at the Asian Institute of Technology in Bangkok. And prior to joining AIT, Dr. Pal served as faculty member at the Center for Disaster Management at the Lal Bahadur Shastri National Academy of Administration in India. He possesses over 21 years of experience working on disaster risk policy and governance, and has written numerous books and other articles in international and peer-reviewed journals on disaster management. So his presentation today is titled National Disaster Governance and Gaps, Inequalities in Humanitarian Aid and Relocation Policies. So please welcome our third speaker today, Dr. Indrajit Pal.
Thank you, Brian. And it's my jobs got much more easy with Mary-Gardner's presentation, actually. So it's a very much interesting to also listen to this PDC's approach. And my presentation today, a little bit, I'm differing because the case study or the application right now I'm going to present is actually applied in South Asia. And now we are taking that process in Southeast Asia. So the process actually started in Southeast Asia. So I'll present the case right now already implemented, how the community will be part of the decision making, and how the early warning information could be helpful for the community. So we'll take a case what I am implementing in Nepal for last 4 years. So that will be the innovation technology. Actually, the name is like climate resilient infrastructure for social transformation and adaptation. In short, we call as a CRISTA. So this is a scientific innovation which actually connecting the technology and the social system. I think we all are aware about this factor. Like there are certain background factors or risk drivers, which is actually taking our risk to a certain level where we are crossing the threshold. I think Charles very nicely given a lot of examples from Southeast Asia, and so I'm very feeling very proud to present after this two presenter because it's very much matching with this example. So this is Nepal's vulnerability map in the different levels. So I think we can see some of the locations are very high vulnerability and vulnerable, and some of the locations are low vulnerable. As you know, Nepal is also in boundary of Himalayan country, one of the countries. So it's majority of the country are very prone for the earthquake. And road infrastructure and some of the basic infrastructure or lifeline infrastructure is also not too much, but also impacted severely in some of the places, especially on the upper Himalaya. So this is the critical infrastructure in Nepal context. So what we have tried to understood and tried to do actually how the critical infrastructure disruption during the disaster and after the disaster can be mapped or can be actually inform the local decision makers, local municipality and local people, so that they can take prior action, so that the humanitarian response could be much faster, and also they can reach to the right kind of people. Because in 2015 earthquake, what we have seen, the places which are approachable or very much close to the roadheads, they are getting a lot of reliefs, a lot of support from the philanthropic organizations and from the government as well. But the location which is disconnected digitally and physically also due to the earthquake was actually not getting anything for a very long time, and it was a very serious issue for a couple of weeks. So what you observe, there are about 576 road disruption in 1 year. And I'm talking about a one set of road, like around 300 to 400 kilometer stretch. So that cumulative disruption, you can see like 58,000 hours, which is actually a lot. If we accumulate the total number of like small holders and also agricultural business and also the transportation, like Nepal is also depending heavily on tourism as well. So this is the road I'm talking about, which is a highway, national highway. So these are the segmented identified problems what we have identified. I'm sure like this exact type of problems also exist in Southeast Asia, and we have now implementing this project in Laos. So it started in this month. Actually, in January we started. So there is an absence of comprehensive database, as our my previous speaker mentioned, like Mary already mentioned about like the data sets are available, but there is not a comprehensive data set which is also available for the local government and the decision making groups to handle it, to understand the actual exposure. And what our system actually we are trying to understand and trying to do is how to capture the granular data or the local level data. National level data is very much available, and there are a lot of locations, lot of places we can get the national level data. But national level data will really not helpful for a small scale activities or small scale event. People don't know what exactly happened. So our intention is to how to popularize or make some framework or process where participatory action or participatory process can go through the local community who are actually impacting. They'll be providing the data through some process to the local government and the local institutions, and that could be build the whole process. So our structure actually we have tried on almost like a Lego building block. So municipality by municipality we can expand. I'll explain a little bit later on this activities. The second is a system for monitoring health status of the critical infrastructure is also completely missing. We know through Google Map like what is the road direction, distance, and all this, but we don't know the road condition with that map. So that is really important for especially where the roads are limited number. The next is outdated and inefficient system of reporting. So reporting systems like, say, for example, like at the national level, there are some reporting system on the disaster in Nepal. It's called Bipat portal. But it's the reporting process come into the play almost takes the verification and all this stuff 3 or 4 days. That is only the disaster reporting. That is a large scale and the national scale. Road department also having their database, but it's also updating in a matrix format. The last one is the general public are not aware about the critical service disruption to make pre-informed decisions. Say, for example, like people are moving from, say, Kathmandu to Pokhara, and they have to travel 6 hours. So if they know beforehand, like there are some landslide happen in like 100 kilometer away. So I'll not start from Kathmandu actually to stuck in between. So there are a lot of things happening in this type of process. People having no information, no businessman, no supply chain is knowing about the whole activity, what is happening and what is going to happen. So actually we are trying to address this in a real sense, and the social impact what we are pursuing is a delayed emergency response to the critical infrastructure damage could be addressed very strongly. Prolonged service disruption also hampering the supply chain and emergency services. So our primary target is how we can support the emergency services and the supply chain, because both are complementary to each other. So this is more or less the system. On the right side, if you see like there is a mobile application, but mobile application will be in local language. So people will be using that, and that's a very simple one. Take a picture with a geotag, and they will be posting it to the respective process, and the dashboard will reflect, and there are some analytics. That analytics will provide some. I'll show some of the dashboard screenshot. So what exactly it will do, like, is integrate the geospatial decision, and also currently we have developed in Android based, but I think it's now the iOS based actually will be coming up in this stage. And why this is important, like, is enhance the effectiveness and the efficiency of the emergency response. Initially, we have thought of like to implementation through a small structure like a municipality level. Then actually we expanded to multiple municipality now. And how it will be implemented, the baseline vulnerability assessment we have done already. And also we have done a very granular level road vulnerability assessment based on certain criteria. And community-led crowdsourcing, which will provide the data, and inbuilt spatial analytics, which will also provide a very interesting feedback and the information to the local decision maker, what they can use immediately in a real-time basis. For this is a data-driven decision making, so there is a full evidence of any decision, and also they can mark the hotspot of the landslides and any of the disruption over the time, like for a couple of months, couple of years, the data will be accumulated and also clustered. And that also can provide a future planning option to take into. So this is the development trajectory. Actually, we started in 21, and then we got the Climate Innovation Challenge award, and then we implemented as an initial showcase. Then the World Bank actually appreciated that application, and then they have rolled out for the second time in Nepal for the multiple university and upgraded version. So we have tried also to the national government many dialogue. At the national level, different policymakers also we have tried to incorporate, and is going quite well. And in the third stage, like right now, World Food Program actually selected a project out of 578 projects globally. Our project is out of 4 projects actually selected globally. So 1 project in Southeast Asia. So we are implementing the same CRISTA model with the advanced version in Laos, along with Nepal expansion. So this is the current actually achievement so far through this process. Like we have produced some 10 knowledge product, which is also some SOP, how it will operate, what type of regulations can be there for the government and the process as well. And we trained a good number of people actually at the municipality level. There are about 400 plus users and beneficiary around 1,000. So we're trying to expand actually in a very wider way. There are about 600 plus incident reporting, and we are but this incident reporting is actually restricted with the monsoon time. So I'd like to also highlight like the organization like PDC and World Food Program, is already on board. I think these are the options where this could be expanded with the multiple information package. So this approach actually is a granular data generation is one of the key. And the second is multi-hazard vulnerability and risk assessment we are considering in the system. For the initial rollout, actually, we have considered 2 critical infrastructure, energy infrastructure and road infrastructure. But now maybe we are also able to consider like other infrastructure, like hydrological infrastructure, then hospitals and schools and other things also can be considered. So we have already built up the database, and that can be also used in the next level. A system installation for the local level municipality, and then the capacity building. Some of the activities has been done to equip the local people, local engineers and local person to handle the dashboard at the municipality level. And for the application mobile app, there is no need to have any type of training program. This is some of the examples how we have database generated the initial granular database. You can see like 365 kilometers of strategic road actually we have mapped physically with the physical survey, and there are about some social infrastructure like school and hospital also mapped for the municipality. As I mentioned, like this is a showcase project. So it was quite successful. Now we are rolling it out and expanding geographically and technically also. So these are some data maybe will be useful for the decision makers and the planning purpose as well. 43% of the road we surveyed, like 365 kilometer, comes under very high and high risk category. So the color signifies that. That means like these are the roads having the slope stability conditions are quite poor, and maybe drainage like mountain drainage are also frequencies are also, drainage density are much higher than other location. So there are about 6 to 7 categories actually you have considered. I'm not putting the questions and the survey component what the road has been followed. So this is that like a screenshot of the mobile application how it looks like. And now we are trying to put AI-based detection, like for the road, like whether it's actually landslide types and all this into the system. So this is a visualization dashboard what the government level will see. So this is the first segment of this, and marking some exact location. So this is the impact process, how the small technological advancement. This is a very not a too much new concept, but we have tried to do it at a very granular level and try to empower the local level, local people. So it's a community will be actually ownership, get the ownership of any type of decision making process, because they will provide the data. They will be on the in the process, back and forth. They'll also get the information back from the local authority to their mobile. So that is actually in operation at certain level. So this will provide the increased understanding of the climate-induced risk. We have now, I mean, primarily we are considering the climate-induced risk, like not earthquake and other type of hazards in this location. It will also enhance the capacity for the country, like where there is a like difficulties in data collection at various level. So since the data-driven risk reduction process, I think it will also be helping in developmental path. Then the last part is the public participation, which is also helping in anticipatory action, which is also a primary goal for Sendai. These are some endorsement from the local people actually. So it's a Benighat municipality says, like, whenever there are any road blockage or failure of the electricity, we always find it difficult to identify whom to contact to report. So, and the local authority also not getting any report properly. So I think this is a very encouraging for us. Like they've found out like it's interesting, and they are using it certain extent. Even the municipality level, like electricity authority, they put the map of the identified all transformers in their locations, so they can identify which transformer is actually damaged at what time and all this. So it So this is the current strategic plan. This is more or less the last segment of my presentation. So in the current stage, like we will, as I mentioned, like we are taking the technology already implemented from Nepal to Laos. So now we are trying for some of the other Southeast Asian countries, because this is the showcasing project is already proved some viability, and also like support for the local government. So it's proved of the concept is done. So now we are trying to expand as much as possible in other countries where there will be a need of this. Yeah. So Lao is our next plan of action for the sprint activity. And I'll stop here. I'll be happy to respond to any other questions. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Indrajit, for another really interesting presentation. Right now, we'll move into a bit of a moderated panel discussion. We have a number of questions prepared asked of the panel. We have a limited amount of time in this section and the webinar in general. So if you could just respond to the questions succinctly in a couple of minutes, that would be great. So our first question is for Dr. Charles Ham. We were wondering how, if you can provide some specific examples of how Indigenous knowledge contributes to modern disaster management.
Thank you, Dr. Szuster. There are many Indigenous knowledge that we ignore, and we've seen many people that brought up, for example, in 2004 tsunami, there is a knowledge called smong. It's a storytelling from previous generation about the tsunami. So there's a story called smong that passed down so people don't stay on the coastline. That's just one. There's stories about protecting the forest, stories about caring for the vulnerable community in the group, in the local indigenous people. And I think we need to explore more. Much study needs to be done about indigenous knowledge and present the case to be adopted and
I think we may have lost the
to
feed
the
from Dr. Ham.
There might be some internet issue.
Yeah, I think we've lost him on this one. So let's just move on, and hopefully we can have Charles come back with us in a few moments. But let's move on to Mary-Gardner, and I think one question that clearly came from your presentation was you emphasizing this last mile challenge that you discussed, and how it's not a purely technological problem. It requires trust, coordination, and local capacity. And so maybe if you could just build on your presentation and talk about how PDC and your approach builds that trust, particularly in communities that may be historically skeptical to or these type of approaches.
Thank you, Brian. One of the things that PDC really emphasizes is that we're not coming in, we're not parachuting in to provide some kind of outside advice and then leaving. When we are working with these countries, we're going in, we're often spending up to a year doing an initial kind of baseline assessment to look at risk and vulnerability, to look at coping capacity, to look at capabilities, institutional capabilities that exist. And the systems are designed to take all of this into consideration. And they bring up what Indrajit, was saying about it's easy to get national level data, but we develop the partnerships to be able to pull in the subnational data. So we are able to set up agreements down to kind of the local level. So whether they're producing information about road closures, we can pull that in if we've set up an agreement with them that through an API. Whether it be socioeconomic indicators or what have you, all of this to kind of give us this granular, specific picture of what the impacts are going to be and what the needs are. And we follow that up with training, with capacity building, both directly. We're doing a lot of train the trainer system that we've introduced, especially in the Caribbean. It's been quite successful. And then online training, which is never as good as in person, but as funding situations shift, it's an option. And so for us, it's all about spending time understanding what the situation is, understanding what the needs are, being responsive to that, and then sustaining those relationships.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. We've got Charles back, so perhaps Charles, you could finish off your answer to the question.
My apology for my bad internet, but I forgot where I was cut off. But Island, how they were protected during tsunami, and people already know what is tsunami, and there are many indigenous knowledge in different locales about protecting the environment and working with indigenous system and the community protection. I think caring for vulnerable, because we all know disaster takes place because humans are affected. It affects lives and livelihood of people. So a lot of land use planning and also marine use planning as well. But there needs to be more and more research on indigenous knowledge so that the world can adapt it into the science and modern practice.
Okay, thank you, Charles. Good to have you back. I was worried we would lose you.
My apology for that.
No problem. Indrajit, a question that we have is how can early warning systems be communicated more effectively to minimize the impacts on at-risk communities?
Yeah, thank you, Brian. I think as we observed, like I was working in most of the Southeast Asian and South Asian countries, and what we found out, early warning system having three legs. One is like generating the early warning, scientific part of it. Second, the early warning is communicating to the scientific group, to the administration. And the third leg is from the administration to the community. And I think the last part is really, really very challenging, and we are really need to do a lot of things on the last part of it, how to connect and how to make the community understand. So what we thought of, I mean, that's why, like, since I am from academia, we are doing a lot of research in these countries. And the research, actually, our intention is how the research could be beneficial to the local people. So the innovation project I mentioned, that was also part of the research, which is going to from lab to land, actually. So I think community should be empowered at certain level of getting the information and also providing the information whatever is possible. Because all the information for the disaster is not possible for the community to provide in a format which will be useful for the government or the scientific world. So I think it's not about the sensors; it's also about the sensitization of the people as well. So the sensor wise, I think all are okay. I mean, there are a lot of things available. We can get a lot of sensor based data, whether it's satellite data or the ground based sensor data. So there is no issue, much issue on that. But issue is like how community will be empowered and also sensitized.
Right, absolutely. We have a question from the audience, and I think it actually, all three of you could actually respond to this in your, in your different ways, because I think it replies to all three and reflects all three of your presentations. And the question is, thinking about the last mile, what are the ways that we can leverage local and Indigenous knowledge to make these important connections? As I say, I think all three of you could probably pitch in on this answer. Maybe we'll start with Mary-Gardner and go from there.
Thank you, Brian. I appreciate the question. I think this goes back to, again, understanding. I liked how Indrajit talked about sensitizing the community. So you can have all the information, but if you're not recognizing what is the way that they need to receive it in order to be able to do something about it. And so, again, my company focuses more on the technology side. So it's even as simple as we have a pilot project right now in Colombia looking at how to get our alerts out on WhatsApp, because more people are using WhatsApp than they're using, just SMS text services. And so that's not Indigenous knowledge as much as but local understanding of what is going to have a better impact is a small example. And we got that information based on talking about it, hearing from the people that we work with all the time. I think the other thing we're doing, again, we're an island-based company or organization, and we work a lot in the Caribbean, and we are beginning to make connections between those who are working within the Caribbean and those working in Pacific Islands, because they have a lot of shared experiences and a lot of shared situations. So it's also how to kind of bring these different communities together in ways that they might not have otherwise, for the opportunity to learn from each other as well. So we don't necessarily have to pull it all in ourselves. Sometimes it's just bringing people together to engage directly.
Thank you. Charles, do you have anything to add on that point in terms of leveraging local and Indigenous knowledge to make connections?
Yes, I think this is a very important question because as I mentioned during my presentation, we, the modern society, think Indigenous knowledge are, backward or unscientific or whatever way we can call it. But we understand also some and am I back? Sorry, somebody tried to call me. But Indigenous knowledge didn't just come out as a fluke. Somebody just decided to do one thing. No, it's been hundreds and thousands of years of observation and experience, and they believe that was the fact, and that's how they should go about. So I think more research and letting the local community, local champions, tell their stories. And then when they tell their stories and we as academia, how do we package that bridge to the academic world, and how do we scientify that there's a science to some of the Indigenous knowledge, some of the Indigenous wisdom. There's a science we can introduce to the science world, and then to other places, and respecting that, using technology, using other tools that we have in the science world, so we can empower that. For example, early warnings. Communities have different ways to pass down early warning system. In Indonesia, we have the bamboo bell. When people ring when something a danger comes. So if you connect to the key leaders, they can hit their bamboo pole, and then it will. Am I back?
Okay. Yeah, thank you, Charles. I think your connection's pretty spotty, so I think we'll move to Indrajit, and thank you for that reply. So Indrajit, just to wrap up and talk about the connections between local knowledge and warning systems.
Yeah, I'm taking it like in a different way because I'm also working extensively in the South and Southeast Asian Delta community, and for last 6 years with one large scale project. So indigenous knowledge, actually, the issue is right now there is a huge difference between these two groups. As Charles mentioned, I fully agree with that point. There are also signs, but that science may be, I mean, we are not interpreting in a way like the we are seeing science. So our science and indigenous knowledge science might be similar, or maybe something much better, but we are interpreting in another way. One, and the second part is the taking the indigenous knowledge further or forward through the generation. So that drive is also missing. We are losing the track, actually, the indigenous knowledge to take it forward. So I think really to preserve that and to keep the knowledge goes to the generation, through the generation, I think we also need to have a call. And our research actually having a lot of, I mean, one of the research we are doing recently for, I mean, 2024 we completed for Bangladesh, India, and Vietnam, to understand the Delta community's indigenous practices. So we found like this interesting story, actually, like the knowledge is not propagating in a way it's supposed to be through the generation. So generational understanding is actually one of the key. I think we hardly talk about this. It's not about the early warning information they are getting, not getting, and all this stuff, because what they used to know, that is not going to the next generation at all, and at some point it will die, it will totally miss, I mean, lost. So that is my worry also, because as we go detail, like similarly for Charles, Charles and we are working for last maybe 5 6 years, we are discussing so many things. So I think that's a very critical component. We really need to find out some way how to take it, or highlighting these options. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, yeah, I agree that intergenerational issue is really important throughout resource management, not just in disaster
Right.
applications, but throughout every form of resource management. That's quite. We certainly see that in Hawaii with our indigenous communities and having issues in transferring that type of knowledge. Well, I think we've reached the end of our time limit now, and I'm sorry for we had to cut short the audience questions. My apologies to the audience for that. But we've reached the end of the webinar, and what we'd like to do now is bring in Terry Skillman to discuss about and share some information on upcoming webinars in the Loose SEA Spring 2026 series. So take it away, Terry.
Thank you so much, Brian. I really appreciate it. As you can see on the slide here, we have 3 more webinars are coming up. We try to set each webinar on the first Wednesday of the month, except April 29th. Because the exam period and study days happen the first week of May at the University of Hawaii, we had to put the webinar on April 29th, the last Wednesday of the month. So please, we'd appreciate it if you make note of it. We really would love it to have you join us. This is the slide for our upcoming March webinar. It's always Wednesday in Hawaii and Thursday in Southeast Asia, and on continental US, it is nighttime. So we're sorry. We just have to accommodate Southeast Asia. We would really appreciate it if you would take our survey and help us with comments and suggestions so that we can improve our webinar. And then last but definitely not least, this has been a really engaging conversation, a webinar today. And I'd like to thank Indrajit Pal and Mary-Gardner Coppola, as well as Charles Ham, and then Brian Szuster for being our moderator. Thank you so much. This has been an incredible webinar, and it will be available to view on our YouTube channel within the next few weeks. So we'll let you know. If you haven't signed up for our newsletter, please go to our website and sign up. You can see in the webinar chat is the links for our website, our Facebook page, and also LinkedIn. And we'd love it if you would keep in touch with us and follow. So mahalo nui loa. Good evening to everybody on the continent. And Hawaii, have a good dinner. And everyone in Southeast Asia, have a wonderful day. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.